Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week I am covering a short history of the Ritz Cinema on High Street West, Wallsend. I hope you will find it interesting. I will just add that unfortunately I don't have any old photos of the Ritz, so all the photos used in this video are ones I have taken in recent years and some new ones that I have taken this week of the building how it looks now. Wallsend already had 4 cinemas, the Tyne on Station Road, McDonald's on Station Road and the Royal and the Borough both on High Street East, but this did not seem to worry ABC as they still had plans to build a new cinema in the town. The plans for the Ritz were put in for approval in June of 1937. However, it took quite some time for them to be approved, and it wasn't until May of 1938 that permission to build was finally granted. One of the reasons for the delay was a dispute over rights of way on the land where the cinema was to be built. Part of the cinema was on the land that was known as the Black Bull Yard, and another part was on the land of a house close by. And although it's not made clear, we can assume that these areas did not want to give up their access to the cinema. But the dispute was finally sorted out and work to build the cinema was soon underway. The company who owned the Ritz were the ABC, or Associated British Cinemas, to give them their full title, but it would seem that they rarely built a cinema in their own name. A contractor would buy the land, arrange the build, and once it was completed, it would then be sold to the ABC at a fixed price. It seems that this was apparently done to hide from competitors that it was going to be an ABC cinema. I have to admit I don't completely understand why they did this, as it is said that the same builder was always used, so surely any competitor would have a pretty good idea who was building the new cinema, but it seems that this was also done when building the Ritz. The designer architect of the Ritz was Percy L. Brown, well known in the area for his work with cinemas, and the builder was Mr. W. Pearson, who was the regular builder used whenever an ABC cinema was built, and the building was completed and ready for opening by May of 1939. A brief description of the cinema appeared in the newspapers, saying that the auditorium was 97 feet long and 75.5 feet wide, and there was seating in the stalls for 1,092 people, along with 554 seats in the circle, giving a capacity of 1,636 seats in total. It was also said to have a large stage, 58 feet by 20 feet, and that the building was described as being Art Deco style. The sound system was RCA, which was said to be the finest around at the time, and that every care had been taken to make sure the comfort of the audience was paramount. However, I didn't find any articles stating what kind of seats had been used, but I would imagine they would have been the latest cushioned style, similar to the kind of things I remember from my childhood days going to the Odeon in the town. The total cost of the building was £50,000, and today that would be around just over £4 million. The opening ceremony took place on May the 15th, 1939. It was opened by the then Mayor of Wallsend, Alderman J. Patton. It was noted that it had been more than 20 years since a new cinema had been built in Wallsend, and it was hoped the people of the town would make very good use of it. It's probably worth mentioning that the last cinema built in Wallsend had been McDonald's, which was actually around 30 years before the Ritz, and in the end the Ritz would be the last one built in the town centre area. The Lyric in Howden was built around the same time, and that opened in August of 1939. It was said that the cinema would create jobs for around 40 people, and the first manager was Mr. R.S. Roberts. Mr. Roberts had been working for many years in the business, having started his cinema working life in Hull in 1934 as a doorman. He had risen through the ranks quite quickly and was soon house manager at the Regal in Hull, and had been working at the Regis in Hull when he was offered the job at Wallsend. The first film shown on opening night was Gangster's Boy starring Jackie Cooper. The other film shown that night was Lassie from Lancashire starring Marjorie Brown. The papers had advertised the opening ceremony at 7 p.m. and that the doors would be open from around 6 p.m. It's not entirely clear, but it is said in one article that only 300 people were there for the opening, and I believe these were invited guests, as afterwards there was a reception and a dance for these guests in the Memorial Hall. The public would probably have been allowed in after the official opening. There are no articles in the paper saying exactly how many people watched the first two films shown, which is a shame, as I would have quite liked to have known how many were there. It was stated in one article that because the Ritz was run by ABC, it should do really well, as they would be able to get all of the very latest films. On screen at the moment is a 1939 example of the films being shown, and I have to admit it did make me laugh, as they don't seem to be either the latest or the best, judging by the review of the second film on offer. Not long after the Ritz opened, the Second World War broke out, and it was said that cinemas then became very important for people. In a lot of ways it gave them an escape from what was going on outside, but also because the pathy newsreels would be shown for those who did want to keep updated with the details of the war around the world. The Ritz continued to show films for many years to come, even as the decline in local cinemas began in the late 50s and early 60s, but by July of 1962 they had decided to move from being a cinema to a bingo hall. The last film shown in the Ritz was on the 8th of September 1962, with Alan Bates starring in A Kind of Lovin'. Again, it would seem that no one made a note of how many people attended the last viewing, which would have been nice to know. The grand opening of what was now known as the ABC Ritz Wallsend Alpha Bingo Club was on Tuesday, September the 18th, 1962, with the doors opening at 6:30 p.m. They had only been closed for a few days between the cinema closing and the bingo opening. The special guest on the opening night was Kenneth Connor. Some of you may know him from the Carry On films, and Carry On Cruising had been released earlier in 1962, so I would imagine he did manage to draw quite a large crowd. However, I wasn't able to find any articles about his visit. It was something that I had never heard about until researching the history of this building, so it does make me wonder if he did actually turn up. The prizes on offer at the opening were a £150 full house jackpot and £75 any line bonus, which was actually quite a lot of money in 1962, and membership to the bingo club was free. In 1965, the bingo installed brand new electronic bingo machines. This was said to be the first in the Northeast, and I would assume this would be the machine used to call the numbers. The Alpha Bingo Club ran until around 1972, when it was taken over by the Mecca Bingo. It was said that the Mecca did apply for a cinema licence with a view to showing late night films on Saturday nights between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. However, the article I read said they had found no evidence that this ever happened, but Get Carter had been shown there in May of 1972 and had been very popular, but perhaps the bingo was more popular, so the film side of things was never followed up. In 1992, the bingo hall was revamped. The stall seating was removed and cash line tables were added. This would have been what it was like on the few occasions when I went there. I didn't go there often, as I worked for a rival company and wasn't all that keen on going to the bingo after working there 7 days a week. But I am sure many Wallsenders will remember going, and I do remember the lines of slot machines in the corridor leading to the main bingo hall. In October of around 2011, the Mecca closed its doors for the last time, and the bingo hall was no more. The borough had closed several years earlier, so this meant there were now no bingo halls in the town centre of Wallsend. After standing empty for a couple of years, in 2014, plans were announced that the building would be converted to a pub by the J.D. Wetherspoons chain. It was hoped that this would breathe new life into the building and save it from being demolished. And the new Ritz Pub opened in around May of 2015. The interior was very different to how it had looked when it had been a cinema or a bingo. The entrance had been completely changed and an outdoor seating area added. The main auditorium area was now a seating area for the pub, and many of the original features, such as the circle still complete with its chairs, were hidden by a false ceiling. The exterior part that faces onto Wallsend High Street thankfully still looks very like it did when it first opened in 1939, with a new paint colour and a nice new sign. Most of the rear of the building is the same as it was when it was a cinema or a bingo, but with some exit entrance doors added. Some 8 years later, the pub is still open and still doing well. I am sure many Wallsenders will remember going to the Ritz when it was a cinema, with picture shows for the children, the ABC minors, and of course the films for the adults. I am also sure many Wallsenders will remember going there when it was a bingo hall, and I expect quite a few of you go there now that it's a pub. The Ritz is an old building with a long history, and one that has managed to change its use a few times and still remain open. And although it isn't a listed building, let's hope it stays in use for many more years to come. I hope you have found this story interesting, and I thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.